The authoritative command of the suburban London Patrol Police tore through the night as they closed in and intercepted a suspicious vehicle. Under the glaring headlights illuminating the cold trunk, a shocking piece of evidence appeared, a jet-black velvet box embroidered with the words, "Diana's Crown." But the truth was, even more terrifying inside the box was completely empty. Upon receiving the report, Prince William raided the royal underground vault with a UV flashlight and laid bare a vicious deception. His mother's priceless treasure on display had been swapped out for a cheap block of glass. The dirtiest conspiracy in royal history had been exposed. Driven by frantic jealousy, Queen Camilla had thrown money at her sister Annabel to hire thugs to steal the real crown and melt it into ashes. But they could never have anticipated that William would turn into a cold-blooded hunter. Using a DNA sample from the scene, he quietly set a hidden camera trap in an old warehouse. The moment Annabel stepped into the trap with a suitcase full of cash, along with an audio recording of Camilla's order to destroy the crown, William broadcasted it live straight to the television screen in the Queen's bedroom. What brutal punishment will fall when the perpetrator is stripped of her jewelry and banished from the palace in a shabby cargo truck? Has William's wrath to protect the legacy of the late Princess Diana truly ended? And how will the British throne be shaken after this fateful, filthy night? The black velvet box embroidered with gold lettering lay limply on the damp, dew-soaked asphalt. The patrol officer shined a high-intensity flashlight straight inside. The white silk lining was torn and bare. No diamonds, no jewelry whatsoever. A chilling sensation ran down the patrol team's spines. They knew they had just touched a secret that could burn the entire royal family to the ground. Just 15 minutes later, encrypted classified information was transmitted directly to Prince William's personal device. He didn't wake anyone. He didn't call the king or any high-ranking officials. All alone, William took long, cold strides straight down to the palace's underground vault, the place where the dynasty's most priceless legacies were kept. The air in the vault was freezing, carrying the faint scent of metal and time. William walked straight to the central marble pedestal. Resting obediently beneath a thick layer of protective glass was the renowned diamond crown of the late Princess Diana. Under the pale yellow light, it still sparkled with that deadly, mesmerizing radiance. Anyone looking at it would nod in admiration of that eternal beauty. But the intuition of a son whose mother had been stripped of everything told William a much crueler truth. He turned off the main lighting system. The vault sank into thick darkness. William pulled a UV flashlight from his coat, the specialized kind used for appraising gemstones. He aimed the lens at the treasure and flicked the switch. The harsh purple light swept over each stone. William's hands clenched so tightly that his knuckles turned white. Under the ultraviolet rays, the diamonds did not emit the brilliant blue fluorescence that is their natural characteristic. They were dull, murky, dead. Those cheap blocks of matter were nothing but crystal glass and alloys exquisitely crafted to deceive the eye. The real treasure was gone. A dirty swap had taken place right inside the most fortified fortress. Wrath surged within William's chest, but his face remained as still as a frozen lake. Memories from a few days prior came rushing back. That night, William had accidentally stood in a hidden corner of the hallway and witnessed a haunting scene. Queen Camilla stood staring at Diana's crown through the glass. Her eyes flashed with the red streaks of jealousy, craving, and a sickly fear. Despite sitting on the highest throne, Camilla was always crushed by Diana's shadow. Whenever the public mentioned those diamonds, they called out the name of the first wife. That very same night, Camilla dragged her biological sister Annabel into a dark room. Trembling, she shoved a leather bag stuffed tightly with stacks of banknotes into her sister's hands. Camilla's face was wrinkled, distorted with hatred, every word hissed through her teeth with pure venom. She ordered Annabel to find an outsider, infiltrate the vault, take the real crown, and have it melted down. Camilla didn't need money. She needed destruction. She wanted Diana's crown to turn into a deformed, unrecognizable puddle of metal so that no one could use it as a stumbling block on her path to absolute supremacy on her upcoming coronation day. William opened his eyes wide, returning to the dark reality of the vault. He bent over closely, examining the red velvet trim of the pedestal. The thief had acted too confidently or too hastily. Caught between the velvet and the metal frame was a strange strand of hair, ash gray and coarse. With a decisive motion, William picked up the hair and dropped it into a sealed plastic bag. Everything was all too clear. The enemy was not an outside gang. The enemy was sleeping on goose-down mattresses right above his head. The hunt officially began. The next morning, sunlight flooded the vast corridors. Camilla appeared before a crowd of photographers in a gorgeous silk dress, wearing a multi-tiered, expensive pearl necklace. She smiled radiantly, waving gracefully. It was the smile of someone completely certain she had plucked out the sharpest thorn. Annabelle stood right behind her, clutching a designer handbag, her eyes glinting with the satisfaction of someone who had just struck it rich. They played the perfect act of family bonding and supreme authority. Standing from the balcony of the West Wing, William looked down. His face revealed absolutely no emotion. He didn't rush out screaming. He didn't expose them immediately. In this life-or-death game of cards, whoever lost their cool first forfeited their life. William decided to bypass the entire national police system. He didn't want any records kept that would give the media a chance to jump in and tear them apart. The DNA sample was secretly transferred to a private forensic team that served military intelligence. 2 days passed in silence, as tense as a drawn bowstring. Camilla continued to bask in the aura of her illusory victory. Finally, a thin folder was placed on William's oak desk. The forensic results pointed to a single name, Marcus Thorne. He was not an international master thief. He was a professional gangster with a solid reputation in the underworld, but he was operating under a flawless cover. William quickly flipped to the personal profile page, his pupils contracting slightly. Marcus Thorne's currently registered employment address was Annabelle's private estate. He was receiving a monthly salary disguised as a diligent gardener. The razor-sharp truth was laid bare. They hadn't hired an outsider at all. Annabelle had brought her own man directly into the palace, using an internal pass to bypass the security scanning system. The enemy was eating at the same table, drinking the same wine with them. 11 o'clock at night at a run-down pub tucked deep inside a suburban slum. Marcus Thorne stumbled out the back door, a half-smoked cigarette dangling from his mouth. The moment he turned into a dark alley, 2 massive dark figures lunged at him with the speed of predatory beasts. There was no shouting. No weapons were drawn. With precise, crippling strikes, William's 2 secret bodyguards slammed Marcus face down into the muddy puddle. His sinewy arms were twisted violently behind his back and tightly bound with plastic zip ties. A black sack was pulled completely over his head. Marcus was hoisted into the air and thrown hard into the back of a waiting SUV with its engine running. In a desolate basement, high-pressure lights shone directly onto the thief's swollen face. He knelt on the cold cement floor, his whole body trembling as he saw Prince William's polished leather shoes approach. William didn't even bother to utter a word of interrogation. A slight upward jerk of his chin was enough. The bodyguard reached into Marcus's pocket and roughly pulled out a cheap mobile phone. The thief's stiff, mud-caked hand was forced to press his thumb onto the screen's unlock sensor. All the dirty secrets burst open. William quickly scrolled through the encrypted conversations. The text messages back and forth between Marcus and Annabelle appeared vividly clear. They had finalized every step. The crown had been dismantled into small pieces ready to be put into a high-temperature furnace. Once everything turned into shapeless metal, Annabelle would bring the remaining suitcase of cash to the rendezvous point to receive the ruins. The corner of William's mouth curled up, forming a chillingly cold half-smile. They were greedy, and greed was their fatal flaw. With his own hands, William typed a forged message from Marcus's phone, sending it straight to Annabelle's personal number. "Everything is done. Melted entirely. Bring the rest of the money to warehouse number 4 at the docks. Come alone." The word "delivered" blinked on the screen. William tossed the phone onto the table. The real hunting party was just beginning. The dead of night. The wind from the River Thames blew up in piercingly cold gusts, howling through the rusted corrugated iron walls of abandoned warehouse number 4. Annabelle parked her luxury car in a nearby vacant lot. She pulled up the collar of her black wool coat, her shifty eyes darting around in the darkness. In her hand, she carried a heavy leather suitcase filled with untraceable stacks of cash. Her fear was completely swallowed up by greed and triumph. Just hand over this suitcase, and Diana's treasure would vanish from the earth, and her sister would become the only queen consort who could never be compared to anyone else. Annabelle took a deep breath and pushed hard against the heavy iron door. The space inside the warehouse was pitch black, reeking of old motor oil and mildew. In the middle of the vast, empty space, under the feeble light of a broken, incandescent bulb, sat a black duffel bag placed neatly on a rotting wooden table. "Marcus." Annabelle whispered, her voice laced with impatience. Not a single reply, only a spine-tingling silence. Unable to wait any longer, Annabelle jogged over to the table with the suitcase of money. She slammed the suitcase down onto the dirty dirt floor, her leather-gloved hands pouncing on the black bag like a starving person seeing food. The metal zipper screeched. Annabelle thrust her hands inside, convinced she would touch heavy blocks of gold and diamonds pried from their frames. But the sensation transmitted to her fingertips was rough and sharp enough to cut the skin. Her eyes widened in shock as she violently pulled the contents out. No gold, no diamonds. It was just a pile of rusty scrap iron, broken pieces of water pipes bound tightly together with black duct tape. And sitting prominently amidst that shabby pile of scrap was a device the size of a matchbox with a glowing red LED light flashing continuously. A hidden camera broadcasting a signal. Annabelle took a step back, feeling as though someone had just choked her throat. The bag slipped from her hands, hitting the floor with a thud. At that exact moment, the darkness was torn apart. A series of high-intensity floodlights from the crevices on the warehouse ceiling simultaneously flared with a blinding glare, shining straight down on Annabelle. The iron door was kicked open. Dark figures in black tactical gear from the Royal Guard unit swarmed in as fast as a storm. Before Annabelle could even let out a scream, her arms were pinned painfully behind her back. Cold metal handcuffs clamped tightly around her wrists, forcing her face down onto the grease-stained concrete floor. The suitcase of money was kicked far away. It burst open, and green bills fluttered down like falling leaves. The punishment wasn't only happening in this damp warehouse. At the same time, dozens of kilometers away in the most luxurious bedroom of the palace, another act of utmost psychological devastation was being triggered. Camilla was draped in a sheer silk robe, leaning back on the soft mattress holding a glass of expensive red wine. Suddenly, the large, flat-screen TV mounted on the opposite wall turned on by itself. Camilla started narrowing her eyes to look. On the screen was not the nightly news channel or an entertainment movie. It was a live camera angle, shaking slightly. The image of Annabelle, her own flesh and blood sister, handcuffed and forced, face down onto a filthy warehouse floor. Banknotes scattered everywhere. The wine glass slipped from Camilla's hand, shattering into pieces, the dark red liquid staining the snow-white wool rug like blood splatters. Her mouth gaped open, unable to believe her eyes. Camilla went to rush to the vanity to grab her phone, but a sound emanating from the TV's surround sound system froze her in her tracks. It was an audio recording. And the most horrifying thing was it was her own voice. A razor-sharp voice overflowing with manic jealousy echoing throughout the quiet room. "Find someone to take it away. Melt it all down. I don't want to see anyone comparing me to that woman on my coronation day. Erase it." The tape automatically rewound. Played once more, then again. Every single word repeated over and over like invisible knives stabbing relentlessly into Camilla's eardrums. She clutched her head tightly, backing away step by step until her back slammed hard against the cold wall. The Queen's face was deathly pale, drained of every drop of blood. Pure panic, fear, and ultimate humiliation blended together. The net had closed in. She had officially fallen into the deadly trap that William had set. There was no escape. As the first rays of morning sunlight shone through the stained glass windows, the palace was submerged in an atmosphere so stifling it felt solid. Every servant and guard held their breath. No documents were signed, no explanatory meetings were held. William stood like a monolith in the middle of the vast marble grand hall, surrounded by his core security team and family members bearing expressions of extreme tension. William's face looked as though it were carved from ice, his eyes burning with the cold, decisive fire of vengeance. In his hands he tightly gripped the fake glass crown. In front of everyone he swung his arm high above his head. Without hesitation, without mercy, William smashed the object straight down onto the hard stone floor. A deafening, shattering sound echoed, ripping through the silence. Cheap shards of glass flew everywhere, glinting with a final fake light before resting under the heel of his sturdy leather shoes. The lie had been crushed. He raised his hand and pressed a small button on a remote control. The audio recording of Camilla's cruel voice giving the order played out once again from the central speaker system, striking directly into the ears of everyone present. All the dignity, all the noble facade that Camilla had painstakingly built over the years completely collapsed, shattering just like the fake crown on the floor. At that same moment on the floor reserved exclusively for the Queen Consort, the suite door was kicked open without pity. 4 tall bodyguards, their faces as cold as assassins, marched right inside. There was no reverence, no submissive bowing. Camilla stood cowering in the corner of the room, her hair disheveled, her frantic eyes continuously muttering meaningless denials. A senior female bodyguard strode closer. She reached out and violently yanked the sparkling pearl necklace off Camilla's neck. The force was so strong that the clasp snapped and the expensive pearls fell clattering, rolling all over the floor. Next, the gold-trimmed velvet robe, the symbol of royal power, was roughly stripped from her shoulders. The rings on her fingers, the bracelets on her wrists, everything symbolizing the status she had used jealousy to seize, was stripped clean. Camilla shrieked, struggling desperately. But that feeble resistance only made her look more pathetic, like a petty thief caught red-handed in the middle of a market. Down in the palace's backyard, a damp area normally reserved only for garbage trucks and food deliveries, a shabby, dreary grey cargo truck was idling, waiting. There were no luxurious armored cars, no royal crests or flags. The rear doors of the truck screeched violently as they were yanked wide open. Annabelle, in clothes covered with mud and grease from the warehouse, was dragged out of another security vehicle. She was crying loudly, begging piteously, but received only an icy silence in return. The guards roughly shoved Annabelle, sending her tumbling head-first into the dark, rust-reeking corner of the truck bed. A few seconds later, Camilla was escorted out. The woman who had harbored the ambition of wearing the most dazzling crown on her head was now draped only in dreary, disheveled grey clothes. Her eyes were vacant, her footsteps staggering like a sleepwalker's. When Camilla was shoved into the freezing truck bed, falling beside her greedy sister, she finally realized she had lost everything. No more power, No more honor. No place left in the history of this dynasty other than the title of a lowly thief. The iron doors of the truck bed slammed shut mercilessly, locking the two women in the cramped darkness. The truck revved its engine, belched out a plume of thick black smoke, and trudged straight out the heavy iron gates, taking the perpetrators away from the world of power forever. From the balcony on the highest floor, William stood silently with his arms crossed. His cold, sharp eyes following the truck until it disappeared behind the row of bare old oak trees. His mother's true memento, the priceless diamond crown, sparkling with the light of nobility, had been recovered from the thieves by the secret security team and was resting safely on the desk behind him. The battle to protect the legacy had ended with a brutal and perfect punishment. But as he turned back into the large room, facing the empty walls of the palace, the corners of William's eyes tightened slightly. The enemy had been destroyed, but to win in this mud pit, he had had to dip his hands into the darkness, employing the most ruthless tactics. To protect what he loved, was he turning himself into a cold-blooded king that everyone must fear? The door slammed shut, leaving a question hanging in the silent space of power. Was today's ruthless strike the end of the betrayal, or merely the opening shot for an era of dictatorial rule governed by fear? An incredibly brutal, yet thoroughly deserved ending for those who dared touch the treasure of the late Princess Diana. But have the storms in the palace truly ended, or is this merely the beginning of an even bloodier era? First, what do you guys think about William's punishment? Did this exposure and the outright banishment via a garbage truck make you feel gloating and satisfied, or did it make you shudder at the ruthlessness and cold-bloodedness of a future king? Where was King Charles in this whole affair? Is his silence a sign of agreement with his son, or will this be the spark that ignites the most horrifying father-son civil war in royal history? And finally, a woman insanely thirsty for power like Camilla. Will she resign herself to wasting away in the dark? Or is this exile just a temporary setback for her to incubate a fatal strike of revenge, dragging what other dark secrets down into the mud with her? Share your thoughts with us in the comment section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.